humanity chooses to fight, we rise as one. We will not yield. We will prevail.
The Weight of Stars, a story of war, diplomacy, and the cost of victory. The Galactic Mediation Chamber orbited silently above the planet Nexara, a structure of polished titanium and reinforced glass that had witnessed centuries of interstellar diplomacy. Inside, representatives from 53 species filled the tiered seating, watching the lone human standing at the central platform. Ambassador Daniel Reeves kept his hands clasped behind his back. His navy blue diplomatic uniform was immaculate. His expression was unreadable. He had been standing there for nearly 4 hours while Supreme Warlord Karzog finished his demands. Karzog was enormous, even by Velthari standards, nearly 3 meters tall, with copper-tinted armor plating covering his shoulders and forearms, and 4 dark eyes that gleamed with absolute confidence. His translator rendered his deep, rumbling voice into perfect galactic standard. "The Velthari Confederation has been extraordinarily patient with your species," Karzog declared, his voice filling the chamber. "We have watched humanity expand aggressively into regions that belong to civilizations with centuries of prior claim. We have tolerated your colonies on worlds you have no right to occupy, but our patience has a limit." Daniel said nothing. He watched every gesture Karzog made. "Therefore," Karzog raised one armored fist, "the Confederation demands the immediate transfer of 4 human colony worlds. Ilara Station, Novareach, Sunrise Vale, and Coldbrook must be surrendered to Confederation authority within 25 standard days. Human populations will be relocated at their own expense. This demand is non-negotiable." A ripple of murmurs moved through the assembled delegates. Several species looked visibly relieved that the Velthari aggression was focused elsewhere. Council Arbiter Solemn Chime, a crystalline being whose species had moderated galactic disputes for 300 years, rang softly. "Ambassador Reeves, Earth has heard the Confederation's position. What is humanity's response?" Daniel stepped to the podium. "No." Karzog's head snapped toward him. "What?" "No," Daniel repeated. "Earth will not surrender those worlds. 15 million human citizens live there. They built schools, hospitals, and neighborhoods. They buried their parents in that soil and raised their children beneath those skies. We will not abandon them because you demand it." Karzog descended from his platform and walked toward Daniel, slow, deliberate steps designed to intimidate. He loomed over the ambassador like a statue. "You speak as if you have options, human. The Confederation controls over 900 systems. Our fleets could reduce your civilization to rubble within a year. You are newcomers who have been in space for barely 2 centuries. You borrow technology you barely understand." "We understand it well enough," Daniel said calmly. "Do you?" Karzog leaned closer, his breath carrying the sharp scent of copper. "How many galactic wars has your species survived? How many battle fleets do you command? The Confederation has been expanding for 12,000 years. What have you truly accomplished?" Daniel looked up at him without flinching. "We're still here. Surviving is not the same as thriving. It's a start." Karzog straightened and addressed the chamber. "The Confederation has been generous. We could simply take what we want without explanation. Instead, we come here, follow proper procedure, and offer humanity a dignified exit. If they refuse, then enforcement becomes unavoidable." The council voted. 27 in favor of the Velthari claim, 13 opposed. The motion passed. As delegates filed out, Karzog approached Daniel one final time. "You should have accepted when I was being reasonable, Ambassador. Now you will learn what the Confederation does to species that refuse to understand their place. Perhaps once we take those 4 worlds, we will find reason to claim a few more." Daniel allowed himself a small, quiet smile. "Supreme Warlord, I need you to understand something before you leave. You have nothing I need to hear. "You don't know what you're waking up," Daniel said softly. "Earth chose diplomacy because we wanted to be better than our history, but our history is long and very, very violent. Think carefully about what you're about to do." Karzog laughed, a hard, dismissive sound, and walked away. 21 days later, Daniel was reviewing trade documentation when the emergency alert shattered his morning. Priority broadcast confirmed Velthari military action against human colony Novareach. Orbital bombardment in progress. He ran to the communications deck. What the screens showed would stay with him for the rest of his life. Velthari warships hanging in perfect orbit over a green and blue world, firing in coordinated patterns. The capital city of Millhaven disappeared at a column of white fire. Then the farming town of Crestwood. Then the coastal settlement of Belmar. One by one, places where humans had built ordinary, irreplaceable lives were erased. "How many people?" Daniel asked. His voice was barely a whisper. The communications officer couldn't finish her answer. Her hands were shaking. The colony had held 16,000 residents. Evacuation had saved roughly 7,000. 9,000 people were gone. Daniel watched in silence until the bombardment ended. Then Karzog's face appeared on the transmission feed, and the satisfaction in those 4 dark eyes was unmistakable. "Ambassador Reeves, as you can see, the Confederation does not issue idle warnings. Novareach is now Confederation territory. You have 8 days to evacuate your 3 remaining colonies. Refuse, and they will share Novareach's fate." Daniel stood very still for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Record this. Broadcast on every Velthari frequency." When the light blinked on, he spoke directly into the camera. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Supreme Warlord Karzog, my name is Daniel Reeves. You just murdered 9,000 human civilians, men, women, and children who never raised a weapon against your people. You killed them to prove a point." He leaned forward slightly. "So let me make a point of my own. I am formally requesting authorization as Supreme War Commander under Total Conflict Protocols, and when Earth Command approves that request, and they will, I'm going to show you exactly what I warned you about. You wanted to see what humans become when you push us too far. I tried to stop that from happening. You chose to make it happen anyway." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. "Now you're going to find out."
Earth's War Council met in a subterranean command facility beneath the Alps. The room smelled of concrete and old purpose. It had been a historical site for decades, a relic from the era when humans fought each other. Now every screen was active and every seat was filled. Prime Minister Adeze Okafor sat at the head of the table, her hands folded, her expression grim. Fleet Admiral Tomas Ruiz commanded Earth's naval forces. General Lena Brandt led ground operations. Intelligence Director Kwame Asante represented the analytical division. "Authorization granted," Adeze said quietly. "Total conflict protocols are active. Commander Reeves, Earth's military is yours to direct. One question: can we win?" "Not by fighting them conventionally," Daniel said. He activated the holographic display. Velthari space blazed in red across the map. Human territory was a modest cluster of blue. "They have 900 systems, 15,000 warships, and 12 millennia of conquest experience. Fleet to fleet, they destroy us." "Then how?" Admiral Ruiz asked. "The same way humans have always fought when outnumbered." Daniel pulled up the Velthari logistical network. "We study them. We find what they can't defend. We never fight fair." He walked the council through what 20 years of intelligence gathering had revealed. The Velthari were traditional warriors, disciplined, powerful, and deeply predictable. They expected enemies to meet them in open battle. They had never faced an opponent who had no interest in doing that. Their entire supply network was automated and centralized, running on systems that had functioned unchanged for 2,000 years. They didn't defend against cyber intrusion because they considered it dishonorable. Their conquered territories held hundreds of resistance movements kept dormant only by the assumption that the Confederation was unbeatable. "We shatter that assumption," Daniel said. "We hit soft targets, supply lines, remote depots, communication nodes. We broadcast every attack across the galaxy so every oppressed species can see the Velthari bleed. And when those species reach out to us, we give them what they need to fight back." General Brandt leaned forward. "You're describing a war that will last years and kill millions." "Yes," Daniel said. "I know exactly what I'm describing. I spent 15 years trying to prevent it." He looked around the table. "They killed 9,000 of our people to make a political point. I'm not willing to let that be the end of the sentence." 3 days later, the EDS Reckoning dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the Confederation's primary fuel processing hub in the outer Sarathi sector. Daniel stood at the command bridge watching the facility grow large on the forward screen. "Defense platforms activating," the tactical officer reported. "Transmit the override sequences. Let's find out if 20 years of intelligence work was worth the investment." The codes went through. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the defense platforms stopped targeting the Reckoning. Their weapons rotated 180 degrees and opened fire on the fuel depot itself. "It worked," someone whispered. The facility broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions visible across 4 neighboring systems. By the time Velthari patrol ships arrived, the Reckoning had already jumped to the next target. Reports flooded in from 5 other strike groups. 6 Confederation installations destroyed, 0 human casualties. Daniel recorded a message and broadcast it on every Velthari military channel. "Supreme Warlord Karzog, this is Daniel Reeves. Today, we destroyed 6 of your facilities. Tomorrow, 6 more. The day after that, 6 more. You told the galaxy defying the Confederation meant destruction. I'm here to show them it means something else entirely." 8 weeks into the campaign, Karzog paced his command deck surrounded by maps that had become painful to look at. 38 Confederation installations destroyed, 17 conquered worlds in open rebellion, supply lines disrupted across 4 sectors, and not a single human ship captured or destroyed. "They fight like ghosts," his second-in-command said. "They appear, strike, and vanish. They know our patrol schedules, our defensive gaps, our response times. Because they've been watching us for decades while we ignored them," Karzog said. "What do we do?" Karzog stared at the tactical display. He had expected conventional warfare. He had expected humanity to meet their fleets with their own fleets and die honorably. Instead, he was fighting shadows that kept getting stronger. "We set traps," he said, "and we wait." The resistance cells began reaching out in the campaign's 6th week. First, the Therini, a species the Confederation had conquered 4 centuries ago, then the Osali, then 11 others. Each one offered intelligence in exchange for weapons and coordination. Daniel accepted every offer, but he was honest with each cell. "People will die. The Confederation will retaliate. This will be brutal before it gets better. Do you understand?" Every cell said yes. They had been waiting generations for exactly this moment. The results reshaped the war. When human strike groups hit targets in Therini space, local resistance fighters simultaneously sabotaged planetary defense grids. When the Confederation moved ships to suppress one rebellion, 3 others ignited. Karzog's commanders were forced to choose between pursuing human raiders and holding their empire together. They couldn't do both. Then came Karzog's trap at the Valathra fuel complex. 300 Confederation warships hidden around a facility that looked perfectly vulnerable. Daniel's intelligence confirmed it within 48 hours. He decided to walk into it anyway. "Phase 2, he ordered as the Reckoning emerged into the ambush. "Execute now." The human fleet accelerated directly toward the fuel storage tanks rather than retreating. Velthari weapons fire scorched their hulls. Shields dropped toward critical levels. But 3 days earlier, the strike ships had been retrofitted with emergency thermal shielding designed to withstand extreme temperatures for exactly 1 minute. 6 human ships struck 6 fuel storage tanks simultaneously. The resulting detonation consumed nearly the entire Velthari ambush force. 220 warships destroyed or disabled.
The human fleet jumped clear 40 seconds before the shockwave arrived. 71 human lives lost. In exchange, they had shattered the Confederation's offensive military capacity in a single engagement. Daniel sat quietly for a long time after the battle reports came in. 71 names, 71 people who had trusted him. Then the secondary reports arrived, and it all turned cold. The Valethra System's nearby planet, listed in every intelligence file as an uninhabited terraforming candidate, had been quietly settled by Karzog 3 months earlier. The radiation from the explosions had reached the surface within hours. 2.8 million casualties. Daniel sat in his quarters for 6 hours and didn't move. Dr. Priya Ose, his intelligence director, found him staring at the wall. The intelligence files showed that planet as empty, she said carefully. I know, Daniel said. Karzog moved colonists there deliberately. He knew we'd target the facility. He used his own people as shields. I know that too, Daniel said. He closed his eyes. They're still dead. When Karzog's transmission came through, the warlord looked nothing like the proud conqueror who had stood in the mediation chamber. His copper armor was dull. His 4 eyes were hollow. You killed them, Karzog said. Nearly 3 million civilians, families. I didn't know they were there, Daniel said. Would it have changed your decision? Daniel had no answer, because the honest answer was probably no, because the alternative had been watching his fleet die, and Karzog had known that, had planned for that. You said I didn't know what I was waking up, Karzog said. You were right. I woke up a species that perfected war over 10,000 years of practice, then spent 2 centuries trying to forget it, and I reminded you that you remember every lesson. He cut the transmission. The Confederation's Supreme Court removed Karzog from command 4 weeks later. The Empire was unraveling. 23 worlds in active rebellion, supply chains collapsed across 60 systems, and a galactic community watching every development with carefully concealed hope. The new Confederation commander, warlord diplomat Shireen, broadcast a ceasefire request within hours of her appointment. Daniel accepted. Then, Daniel did something that left his entire crew speechless. I'm going to Vafari Prime alone, he said, to negotiate the peace in person. That's suicide, Admiral Ruiz said through the communication screen. If they wanted me dead, they'd attack the fleet. Shireen sounds desperate, not murderous. Someone has to end this, and it should be the person responsible for what it became. He landed on the Velthari homeworld in a single shuttle, unarmed except for his diplomatic credentials. Shireen met him in a courtyard beneath a sky the color of old copper. You are very brave or completely reckless, she said. Both, probably, Daniel admitted. How is Karzog? In custody. The council wants to try him for the crimes that started this war. She studied Daniel carefully. And you? Our people are calling for your execution. 3 million dead.
Then they should have it, Daniel said. Put me on trial. I'll testify for as long as necessary. I'll accept whatever sentence a neutral tribunal decides is appropriate. But first, let's end the war. Shireen was silent for a long moment. I didn't expect that. I know. But Karzog was right about one thing. I became something during this war that I don't want to be. The only way I can live with what happened at Valethra is to face it directly. The peace negotiations lasted 11 days. Shireen drove hard bargains. Daniel conceded where he could, held firm where he had to. The final terms included full cessation of hostilities, substantial reparations to humanity for Novareach and other damaged colonies, immediate recognition of independence for any conquered species that chose it, and a permanent reduction of Velthari offensive military capacity. The Confederation also formally acknowledged that the destruction of Novareach constituted a war crime. That acknowledgement, 3 sentences in a legal document, mattered more to Daniel than any strategic victory. When Prime Minister Okafor confirmed Earth's acceptance of the terms, Daniel felt the war end inside him. Not with triumph, with exhaustion. 6 months later,
Daniel stood before the Galactic Tribunal on the neutral world of Thesara. 15 judges from 15 species. He testified for 4 days, holding nothing back. He explained every decision, every calculation, every moment where he had chosen ruthlessness over restraint. The tribunal deliberated for 9 days. Their sentence? 4 years of supervised humanitarian service, coordinating reconstruction efforts on worlds damaged by the conflict. Not imprisonment, but not freedom either. A structured accounting. Daniel accepted without appeal. He spent those 4 years on a dozen different worlds, most of them former Confederation territories finding their footing as independent civilizations. He helped plan water infrastructure for the Thereni. He coordinated medical supply chains for the Osali. He sat in planning meetings and listened to people who had spent generations under oppression describe what they actually needed. It was the most useful work he'd ever done. On the final day of his service, an elderly Thereni woman approached him outside the construction site where he'd been working since morning. She carried a small carved stone, a memorial tablet bearing names in her species' angular script. "Commander Reeves," she said, "my grandchildren were born free because of what you did, because you fought when no one else would." Daniel looked at the tablet. "I fought for humanity. Your freedom was a consequence. Does the distinction matter?" He thought about that for a long time. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I'm still trying to work that out." He returned to Earth afterward, to a small house on the Oregon coast, where he spent his mornings watching the ocean and his afternoons growing vegetables that he gave to his neighbors. Simple work, work that required no tactical analysis. Young officers occasionally made the journey to ask him for advice. He always told them the same thing. The person you're about to go to war with is somebody's child, somebody's whole world. War should be the very last door you open, because once you walk through it, you cannot fully control what you become. I went to war to save lives, and I succeeded. But I came home carrying 3 million faces I will never forget. He paused each time before the next part. Be smarter than I was. Find the door before that one. Karzog died in a minimum security medical facility 3 years after the war ended, stripped of his rank and titles, but treated humanely, which was more than he had offered Novareach. He had requested, through proper channels, a brief correspondence with Daniel in his final months. They exchanged 7 letters. In the last one, Karzog wrote, "I thought I was preventing humanity from becoming powerful enough to challenge us. Instead, I guaranteed it. My arrogance built the very thing I feared. I want you to know that I understand that now. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am only asking that you tell people what I told you, that fear makes terrible strategy, that what I did to your people was wrong, and that the war that followed was the direct consequence of my choice, not yours." Daniel kept the letter in his desk drawer until he died. The memorial dedicated to everyone lost in the Valthari-Human War was built on Thesara, visible from orbit. It showed individual faces, 9,000 from Novareach, nearly 3 million from Valethra, tens of thousands more from battles and rebellions across 40 systems. Every face was unique. Every face was somebody. At the center was a single inscription in 16 languages. Here we remember what pride costs, what fear demands, and what war takes that it never returns. May those who come after us choose differently. Daniel attended the dedication. He walked the memorial alone, stopping at the section dedicated to Valethra's children. He stood there for a long time without speaking. An elderly Valthari woman, a survivor, her copper scales faded with age, approached him carefully. "Did you know any of them?" he asked. "No," he said. "That's the hardest part." She nodded slowly. "My daughter was on Novareach. Karzog killed her. You avenged her. I don't know how to feel about that." Neither do I, Daniel said. They stood together in silence, two people from opposite sides of a war, watching sunlight move across a wall of faces. After a while, she said quietly, "Do you think it was worth it?" Daniel looked at the memorial for a long time. "I think it was necessary. I'm still not sure if those are the same thing." Daniel Reeves died at age 87 on the Oregon coast, watching the ocean. His official record listed his titles: Ambassador, Supreme War Commander, Humanitarian Coordinator. His personal note, found in his desk alongside Karzog's final letter, said only this: "I tried peace first. I meant it. When peace failed, I fought as hard as I knew how. When the war ended, I faced what I'd done and tried to make it mean something beyond the killing. I don't know if I succeeded. I only know I tried. Be better than me. Find the door before the last one."
Witness the storm I command. None shall defy this power.